Sports Talk Chicago. Here for Jon Zaghloul, and we are back and ready for today's special guest. He's the author of Quarterback Dads and the senior editor of PointsBet USA. Please welcome Teddy Greenstein to the program. Teddy, great to have you on. How are you?
John Z, I'm great. This is, I'd say, at least my fourth time on. So I think that's a good sign that you keep inviting me back. Always new ground to cover and always love chatting with you.
What do you make of the Bears-Giants game first off? We'll start there.
Yeah, I think I've managed to pick every Bears game wrong. So let's start with that very impressive work. You know, the Bears were getting 3 points at MetLife Stadium. And this was kind of interesting, John. You know, we get information. We call them insights in terms of where the money is, who's betting on who. And the sharp money, the massive money, that game was on the Bears. It was like 80+% of the money was on Chicago. So as I told people, I'm like, if you bet the Bears today and you're wrong, don't feel bad. Everybody is with you. I did hit the under in that game, so that was certainly nice. But you know, just from a game perspective, it was frustrating because it's one of those games you can win, and the offense looked pretty good in the first half, and then there was just kind of a shutdown mode and a bunch of mistakes, and then you look at the end of it, and you're still just kind of amazed this is an NFL team, given how little passing game this offense produces.
How do you evaluate Justin Fields' performance?
You know, it's up and down. It's hit and miss. I think we all love him because, like, he's athletic and he's tough. I mean, I keep thinking he's taking these shots and he's going to end up down like Tua or somebody, and he seems to bounce right up. So I think he's resilient. He's got that toughness and maybe just that body type that allows him to come back. You know, you just like his offensive line to be better. Now, against the Giants, that was a blitz-heavy team, so you understand there are going to be some sacks. But, you know, just in looking at some numbers, I don't know if you saw that Dan Pompei tweet, or maybe you already know it, but, you know, we're talking about a sack rate of 19.3%, which is one of the absolute highest of this century. It's like up there with David Carr a couple of years, and 34 completions, 67 attempts, lowest for any four-game starter this century. So, I mean, I still feel like once he gets a good offensive line around him and some better skill guys, Justin Fields is going to be a top 15 quarterback.
I mean, he did hit the yards prop last week, albeit it was pretty low. One of the lowest ever, right? Is that what it was?
Had to be. I mean, I remember for the Packers game, it was 200.
Okay.
Then for the week after that, it was 170 for his passing yards total. And then I saw last week it was 145. And I'm like, wait a second, is this like the Army-Navy game? Like, is this Air Force or something? Is this an NFL quarterback? You know, you just never see them that low. Like Daniel Jones in that Giants game was like 195, I want to say. So, I mean, usually the lowest you see, you know, Cooper Rush has been a little higher than that. Who was the Patriots starter who got knocked out, who was 0-11 going into that game? The former Michigan State quarterback. Help me out here, John. Who was the Patriots starter on Sunday? He got knocked out after a few plays. Okay, we're going to look it up. His was only about 180. But again, that's usually the lowest you ever see a quarterback total. So when they're that low, it certainly tells you something about that Bears offense.
Now, you did say that if there is an offensive line, Justin Fields will be a top 15 quarterback. You stand by that statement. Why are you confident in that?
By the way, Brian Hoyer is the forgettable name that I could not come up with. I think he's got every tool. I think he's athletic. He's got a strong arm. He's intelligent. I think he works at it. I think he's a good leader. Yeah, I just think there's simply no reason why he can't be a very successful NFL quarterback. Now, other guys have had every tool and then they've fallen off. You know, I mean, RG3. I mean, there are just so many guys who've had like quick bursts of success and then have not been able to maintain it. But with Justin Fields, I don't see any obvious flaws as long as he's going to keep working at it and keep studying and, you know, figure out, I've only got 2 seconds back there. What should I be doing? I got to be aware of the pass rush, you know, even on my blind side, and make the right decisions, because certain times you're seeing, well, he probably could have, you know, checked it down and made a 5-yard completion, and instead he's taken a sack.
Now, you covered Justin Fields when he was at Ohio State back when you were still with the Tribune. So what have you seen in the NFL? Has it compared to what he's done at Ohio State? How do you reconcile both those things?
Yeah, I mean, at Ohio State, you know, usually maybe 9 of the 13 games, you see wide open receivers. there's just such an advantage athletically of their receivers versus the DBs in the non-conference games, and even against some Big Ten teams where you just see guys wide open and it's easy. And of course, in the NFL, the windows are just dime sized, and you got to be able to decide quickly and move and just, hit guys in this tiny little window, smaller than an open tire. So that's the difference. A lot of guys can do it in college. They're well protected, and they got the guys to get open, and the Bears don't protect him well, and there's not a ton of separation, but it's early, and there are very few quarterbacks, there are very few Justin Herberts who seemingly step on the field, and as soon as they start, they're lights out.
Where do you stand on this weekend's game? Bears, according to some, are plus 7.5 against the Vikings.
Yeah, our line is 7, and it's balanced on each side. So for people who know a little bit more about betting, we offer minus 107 on each side at PointsBet, which essentially means our line is our price is like 3% more favorable than the other guys. So if you're betting a big amount, it's really good. So I see it at 7, and I don't think it goes to higher than 7. I mean, the Vikings were so impressive in week 1, but have really retreated since then. Obviously, barely beat the Saints, and the Bears are certainly plucky. I mean, if Justin Fields reaches over the line in Green Bay, that turns out to be a close game. So it's not like these guys, even in their losses, are getting anything blown out, not even close to that.
How about on prop bets? Any Bears or Vikings players you're really looking at closely?
Not just yet. We'll place the props. We'll price those up and get those up probably tomorrow. Certainly by Friday when people are in real betting mode. But I think Justin Fields now is probably in that 165 passing yard total. Khalil Herbert's probably 70, 75 yards, something like that. I don't know if David Montgomery's been ruled out. So the Bears are certainly not going to be a team where you look at and say, okay, a lot of receivers who are, totals of 95, like Cooper Kupp usually goes into the game with an over-under of 95, and he seems to go over every single game. It's not going to be like that for the Bears, but if they can grind out some wins and, keep Justin Fields healthy and on the upswing, then it's going to be a fairly successful season.
Teddy Greenstein here on Sports Talk Chicago. Teddy, how disappointing was the White Sox season? Let's shift there too.
Absolutely dismal. I mean, they had the opportunity to seize the city. Everybody knew the Cubs weren't really going to be good, and the Blackhawks were awful, and the Bulls were disappointing. So, just in the spring, it's like you guys have every chance in the world, and just a combination of bad health and Tony LaRussa asleep at the wheel at times, and guys like Yohan Moncada just completely falling off the map. It was just abject failure. They know it. There's really only been one season of late where I feel like the White Sox overachieved, and that was, of course, last year. And even last year, after a nice 93-win season, there was absolutely nothing in the playoffs other than good atmosphere on the South Side for the games. So just disappointing. There's a spot here for them, and now we have to rely on the Bulls to make us happy as these cold winter months are approaching, John.
Is Tony LaRussa leaving going to be the big answer for the White Sox next year?
No, because as we know with baseball managers, like there's a reason most of them are paid so little relative to other sports and relative to the players. A good or bad manager probably only matters for about 4 victories or 4 losses. I'm sure fans think it's more than that. But it just seems to be, there's only so much Tony can do about the quality of hitting. Like, there's just a power outage on the South Side this year. And I don't know what he can do about that. Hitting coaches can't do much about it. It's a helpless feeling because you want to blame somebody, right? And we can't put ourselves in the shoes of Yohan Moncada and say, be better. So we put ourselves in the shoes of Tony LaRussa because we could all theoretically manage the team. We can't hit a 94 mile an hour slider. But look, managers set the tone, but even a guy like Joe Madden, who for a long time we all viewed as an absolute genius, a 100 out of 100 in terms of intangibles, whether it's dealing with the players and motivating them or handling the press. Even he, has seen only limited success in his final couple of years with the Cubs and then with the Angels. So managers in baseball, the truth of it is just have a minimal impact on wins and losses.
Now, I've seen rumors that Madden may come to the South Side to manage. Are you hearing those, or who else do you think could be in consideration?
I mean, selfishly, I would love that. I mean, it's not like I cover the team anymore. Now I'm
Right.
a points bet and I'm just sort of an observer and I'm taking clients to games and entertaining them. But Joe Madden, when I was doing the Cubs, and I would be sort of the second guy or the third guy or the columnist. Uh, of all the great guys I dealt with in 24 plus years, I mean, he was in that top collection where he's just not only a great person, but 100% to deal with and always explain stuff well. And I'd be in press conferences where somebody would be asking basically the same question for a third straight day, and I'd be rolling my eyes, and yet he would give a great answer, and I'd be like, wow, this guy's much more patient than I am. So, and I think he's probably kind of young at heart. So even if he technically is an older guy, I think he could certainly still do it. I'd be curious about Miguel Cairo. He seemed to, breathe some life into the Sox, but I mean, for me, AJ Brzezinski would be incredibly exciting and would get his guys' attention. And as we know, John, in professional sports or even in college sports, you always go with the opposite, right? So in college sports, if you had the young fiery guy and he doesn't work out, then you go for the veteran guy who's going to treat us like men. And with Tony LaRussa, if you had the guy who you were worried was, just kind of snoozing through some of this stuff and maybe not well in touch with the players, then you bring in the young guy who's going to have them fired up. So AJ would certainly be that. One of the brainiest, most interesting, controversial players during his stretch. And the team would hopefully reflect him and be super scrappy at the least.
Teddy Greenstein still here on Sports Talk Chicago. Teddy, a few more questions before we finish up. First off, quarterback dads, how's it been going?
John, it's been going great. We've sold a few less than 1 million copies. So there are still some available on Amazon.com. And if anybody wants me to sign them, just reach out on Twitter at Teddy Greenstein, or maybe they want to buy this lovely gear. But it's been very satisfying. A lot of dads have reached out and they've said, oof, I didn't realize that I was, the stat hungry dad or the wee dad who's always saying like, oh yeah, we're looking at this school, we're looking at that school. So I was able to diagnose it. We have, 12 types of quote unquote bad quarterback dads and 5 good ones. And we want more people to shift from the bad to the good. So people have come out and they said, okay, now I realize I need to slow down a little bit. Don't be so obsessed with stats. Don't be, harassing the offensive coordinator. Don't be going on message boards, all the things you should not be doing as a quarterback dad. And what's cool is it applies to other sports. So if you have a kid who plays lacrosse or swims, or like my kids who play soccer or volleyball, I think you're going to learn some stuff here.
What's made the book so rewarding for you?
When parents come up or DM me and they say, okay, I was the guy who, was taking video of every workout, or I was the guy who was in, the ear of the offensive coordinator, or, another thing you never want to do, don't wish bad upon, the kid who's the first stringer above yours. It's just bad karma. It's going to come back to bite you. So when I hear from dads and a couple moms who say, all right, I didn't realize, this book is in part about me, and now I'm going to, improve and hopefully forge a better relationship with my kid. That's certainly the best part. And then one other thing, there's a hope here that we can actually turn it into something that ends up streaming. So maybe a documentary, maybe a series. I mean, we've seen stuff like QB1 and Friday Night Lights. So there's an insatiable appetite there for football. And I think this is an exciting one too, because you're adding not only football, but sort of crazy quarterback dads. And guys like me who have kids who play youth sports, I think we can all relate to that.
That I was assuming there'd be a sequel to the book, but actually a streaming series sounds really good too.
I mean, I'll tell you this, John. I was with Donovan Dooley. He's the quarterback trainer who I worked with on the book, and he showed me his phone. And his phone said, hey, you need to talk to the coach because my kid needs to get more stats. And Donovan turns to me and says, that was from a mom. So if there's going to be a sequel, I think it's going to be called Football Moms, because look, quarterback dads are often the ones who are helping to steer the kid to one school or the other. They're the ones who are hiring and firing the trainers and, overly involved sometimes on social media. But the moms are emerging now as well in this era of NIL. Everybody wants to get a return on their investment. They're spending a lot of money for training. And when that kid graduates from high school, they want that kid to be signing up with some companies to make some money.
Before we finish up today, last question. How do you do at the Writers' Cup?
Yeah, the Writers' Cup, as we call it. Thanks for asking. So obviously, we use the same format as the Ryder Cup,
Okay.
which is slightly more famous. I think that event. It is 9 holes of best ball, 9 holes of alternate shot, and then singles. Illinois rallied, and we had a nice victory over Team Wisconsin. It was a really cool course called Abbey Springs up at Lake Geneva. Highly recommended. Nice public course up there for anybody who goes there in the summer. And I did okay. I actually teamed with Eric Ciotti, who's a former Northwestern golfer, for the first match. I mean, this is a guy who was a teammate of Luke Donald. So if I can't win with him, there's really something wrong. We ended up tying our match because a kid on Team Wisconsin birdied the final 2 holes. Dan Roan was my partner for alternate shot. We were all square going into the last hole, and Team Wisconsin beat us there. And then on singles, I was able to tie my match when my Wisconsin opponent missed a 5-foot putt, to which I thanked him profusely and said, "You just made my ride home so much better." So it was a great event. We all get to, it's fun to compete in golf when every stroke matters and you can't fluff up your lies. You have to really play it straight. And we had a beautiful day up in Wisconsin on Monday. So Team Illinois, we got it done this year.
Well, Teddy, thank you so much for joining me. Always a pleasure. Best wishes over at PointsBet and with Quarterback Dan, and looking forward to the next time we chat as well.
As I say every time I do this, you ask fantastic questions, always well-researched, and I appreciate it tremendously. Love your podcast, and hope to do it again soon.